Welcome to our deep dive. Today we'll be looking closely at, well, excerpts from Brotopia, breaking up the boys' club of Silicon Valley.
Okay.
It's about how the tech world as we know it came to be, what it is today, and especially why it struggled with gender diversity.
Right.
You've got, all sorts of things from Emily Chang's book, anecdotes, historical analysis, even survey data,
Yeah.
all to help us understand this this complex issue.
Brotopia is really good. It does a good job of kind of piecing together all the historical context, that led to the current situation in Silicon Valley.
Okay.
It's like it really goes deep into this whole culture that, prides itself on being forward thinking, but like often has a lot of trouble breaking free from its past.
Yeah, it's interesting how one of the most striking things that Chang starts with is the story of this Playboy centerfold from 1972 named Lena. It's not exactly what you'd expect to find in a book about, about the tech world.
Yeah. I mean, that's certainly an attention grabber, for sure.
Right.
But what's so fascinating is how this, this seemingly harmless picture became like a standard test image.
Oh, why?
For these image processing algorithms. Like, for decades, it was used in everything. Compression software, even medical imaging.
So what's the problem with using this image? It's just a photo, right?
Well, yeah, on the surface, I mean, it might seem harmless.
Yeah.
But, you have to think about the message that it sends.
Right.
Particularly to women who are just starting out in the field.
Okay.
It kind of normalizes the objectification of women. It reinforces, like, this subtle idea that their value is all about their appearance rather than their intellect.
I see. And Chang actually mentions that some female engineers felt uncomfortable or even like excluded because of this image.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Chang, she interviewed several women who talked about, feeling alienated and out of place. Like whenever they encountered this image in their studies or even at work. One woman in particular, Deanna Needell, she describes how seeing this Lena picture in a textbook was like a turning point for her.
Really?
It made her really aware of her gender in this male-dominated environment and made her feel like she didn't belong.
Wow. That's really sad.
Yeah.
But it really does highlight, the subtle ways in which bias can, permeate a field. Not, always overt discrimination, but it's these like seemingly small choices that can create a culture that makes women feel unwelcome.
Yeah, precisely. And the Lena problem is just one example of a much larger pattern that emerges in Brotopia.
Okay.
Which is how like seemingly neutral technical choices can actually reflect and even reinforce these existing power structures.
Right. This brings us to another interesting part of the book.
Okay.
Which is the historical roots of the whole boys' club culture, right?
Okay.
Chang argues that the personality tests they were using back in the 60s and 70s to find programmers actually unintentionally favored men.
Well, they designed the tests to identify people who were like antisocial and preferred working with machines over people. And back then, those traits were more associated with men.
Oh, interesting.
Even if that wasn't the intention.
So it sounds like these tests just inadvertently built bias into the system right from the very beginning.
Yes, and this, this combined with those emerging tech heroes like Steve Jobs, who was the embodiment of that confident, risk-taking lone wolf genius.
Right.
It just further cemented this stereotype that a lot of women felt excluded from.
Even today, it seems like this idea of a certain type of programmer being, ideal persists.
Yeah.
It raises this question of whether meritocracy, as it's often touted in Silicon Valley, is really as objective as it claims to be.
That's such a crucial point.
Yeah.
And Chang, she kind of digs into the early days of PayPal and the rise of this so-called PayPal mafia.
Oh, right.
This group of founders who went on to become, major players in Silicon Valley. And they often talk about hiring people like us.
Okay.
Which, naturally leads to a less diverse workforce.
Didn't they claim their hiring was was a meritocracy? Like the best person for the job regardless of background?
They did. But as Chang reveals, Peter Thiel, who's one of the PayPal founders, he actually wrote in his book that the early PayPal team worked well together because we were all the same kind of nerd.
Oh, wow.
And that statement, it really speaks volumes about their definition of merit.
I see. So even though they may not have, explicitly intended to exclude women, their hiring practices created a system that favored those who were already part of their network.
Exactly. It's like an example of how unconscious bias can shape an entire industry.
Right.
And the success of the PayPal mafia, it only solidified this culture of pattern matching, hiring people who fit a pre-existing mold.
It sounds like that mentality would make it almost impossible for anyone who doesn't fit that mold to break into the industry.
It definitely creates a pretty significant barrier.
Yeah.
And this isn't just a problem like at the entry level.
Right.
It also affects access to funding. Like venture capitalists who are mostly male.
Yeah.
They also tend to invest in founders who remind them of themselves.
Right.
Which often means funding more men.
Chang, she highlights that, like, in 2016, women-led companies received only 2% of venture capital funding.
Wow, that's crazy.
That statistic alone shows how pervasive this issue really is. What kind of what kind of impact does this have on women entrepreneurs?
It's incredibly discouraging, to say the least.
Yeah.
Chang tells the story of Katrina Lick,
okay,
who she founded Stitch Fix.
Right.
And despite having a really strong business plan and early success, she really struggled to get funding for her Series B round.
Really?
Yeah. It took her much longer.
Wow.
And required so much more effort than it probably would have for a male founder.
That must have been really frustrating for her.
It was. And her story, it's a testament to the resilience of women entrepreneurs. But it also begs the question, like, how many brilliant ideas just never get off the ground?
Right.
Because the founders couldn't get funding because of their gender.
Yeah, it's a sobering thought.
It is.
And this bias in funding, it just seems like it reinforces this cycle of inequality in the tech industry.
It's a self-perpetuating system.
Yeah.
Fewer women get funded.
Right.
Which means fewer successful women-led companies.
Right.
And then that makes it harder for other women to get funded. It's this vicious cycle.
So we've got the Lena problem. We've got these biased personality tests, the PayPal mafia and their hiring practices, and now this huge gap in venture capital funding for women.
Yeah.
It is not a pretty picture.
No, it's not.
Is there any hope for breaking this cycle?
That's a question that we'll explore as we go further into this.
Okay.
But before we get into potential solutions, I think it's really important to understand the full scope of the problem.
I agree.
And from what I've read, there's another part of Silicon Valley culture that we need to talk about: the party scene.
Okay.
Yeah. This is where things get a little uncomfortable.
Okay.
Chang, she reveals that these exclusive, drug-fueled sex parties.
Whoa, wait, seriously?
Yeah.
This sounds like a Hollywood movie.
I know.
Not a real industry.
It's real, unfortunately, and it creates this real problem for women who are trying to navigate this world.
How so?
Well, if they go to these parties, they risk being judged, objectified, and potentially excluded from all the important business conversations.
Oh, wow.
But if they refuse to participate, they risk missing out on these networking opportunities.
Okay.
And being seen as, not fitting in.
It's a lose-lose situation.
It's a classic double bind.
Yeah. Chang gives a lot of detail about the types of people at these parties.
Yeah.
And the things that go on there.
It's pretty eye-opening.
Yeah.
It really is a stark reminder that even in an industry that prides itself on being progressive and innovative, there are still these pockets of
deeply ingrained sexism and misogyny. Well, this is a lot to unpack. We've got a lot more to discuss about the consequences of this whole boys club culture. But let's Let's take a break here. Let everything sink in for a minute.
Okay.
And we'll be back in a bit to continue our deep dive into Brotopia.
Sounds good. Picking up where we left off, do you remember how in the beginning Google seemed to have a more balanced culture?
Yeah.
With some pretty high-profile women in leadership?
Right. I remember reading about Susan Wojcicki, Marissa Mayer, and Sheryl Sandberg.
Right.
And what I found really striking was that even with these women shaping Google's early culture, challenges still popped up as the company grew.
Yeah.
How is that possible?
It's complicated.
Yeah.
While women like Wojcicki had a lot of influence.
Right.
You know, think about it. She championed that advertising model that basically built Google.
Right.
But they were still working within a system with ingrained biases. Right.
It's like trying to turn this huge ship.
Okay.
It takes time and constant effort.
And Chang points out that even Wojcicki faced sexism, even with the support of Google's founders.
Yeah.
It seems kind of paradoxical.
It does.
Doesn't it?
It really speaks to how deep-seated these biases can be, even when you've got supportive leadership at the top.
Yeah.
There can still be resistance. And individuals clinging to those old-fashioned views.
Oh.
It shows that, we need a systemic change, not just a few individuals pushing for it.
What were some of the specific challenges that Google faced as it grew?
So Google, they actually implemented some pretty innovative diversity initiatives.
Okay.
They started keeping track of the percentage of women engineers, which forced them to actually look at the numbers.
At one point, they even made recruiters hire a certain number of women.
Oh, wow.
Before they could hire any more men.
That's pretty bold.
Yeah.
Did it work?
It's hard to say for sure what the impact was, but these initiatives show that at least some part of Google was trying to tackle the problem head on.
Right.
But at the same time, Chang points out this disconnect between, these efforts and what a lot of female employees were actually experiencing. There were rumors about executives having inappropriate relationships.
Right.
Which created this feeling that bad behavior was okay.
So kind of good intentions, but the reality sometimes didn't quite match up.
Yeah, I think that sums it up. And this led to lawsuits alleging gender discrimination.
Oh, wow.
A lot of female employees felt like their concerns weren't being heard.
Right.
Chang tells the story of Kim Scott,
okay,
a director at Google who actually had Wojcicki and Sandberg as mentors.
Wow.
And while she praised their support, she also talked about this incident where a male colleague made a sexist remark to her.
That's just that's disheartening.
Yeah.
It really
it's tough.
It shows that even with strong female leadership, sexism can still find a way to
thrive.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that changing a culture, it takes more than just good intentions, It requires real effort.
Yeah.
A willingness to confront these uncomfortable truths, and real concrete steps to address the systemic problems.
It makes you wonder if even a company like Google, knowing for being relatively progressive, struggles with this.
Yeah.
What hope is there for the rest of the industry?
That's a valid question. But Brotopia isn't just about, pointing out the problems.
Okay.
Chang also explores how individuals and groups are, fighting for change.
Okay. That's good to hear.
Yeah.
Who are some of these people leading this charge?
One of the most prominent is Susan Fowler.
Okay.
A former Uber engineer.
Right. I've heard of her.
Her blog post about the sexual harassment she experienced at Uber went viral.
Right.
It really got people talking about sexism in tech.
Yeah.
And, it really gave others the courage to come forward with their own stories.
Fowler's, her courage was incredible.
Yeah.
It feels like a turning point.
Yeah.
Like the industry finally had to confront the issue.
Yeah, it was.
And alongside Fowler, there are many others working to make things better.
Yeah, there are.
Tracy Chow.
Oh, yeah?
A software engineer.
Yeah.
She called for these tech companies to release their diversity data.
Yeah, that transparency It helped to, show the scale of the problem.
Right.
And made it a lot harder for companies to ignore.
Sunlight is the best disinfectant.
That's right.
What about venture capital?
So there have been some notable shifts.
Okay.
Ellen Powell's lawsuit against Kleiner Perkins, well, she didn't win.
Yeah.
It really brought the issue of gender bias in venture capital to the forefront.
It showed that that even these prestigious firms weren't immune.
Exactly. And her actions. They really paved the way for other women to speak up and demand change.
So are we seeing more women-led venture capital firms now?
We are, which is encouraging.
That's good news.
Yeah.
Supporting these firms seems like a really direct way to address the funding gap.
It is.
So while Brotopia lays out some, pretty alarming things, there are these glimmers of hope.
There are.
And signs that change is possible. Mm-hmm. What else does Chang suggest as potential solutions?
She proposes a few things.
Okay.
One is encouraging more women to enter the tech pipeline.
Okay. By
promoting STEM education early on.
Okay.
And creating, more inclusive learning environments.
The book talks about how Silicon Valley's obsession with this work-life integration can actually backfire.
Right. The idea of blurring those lines.
Right.
It sounds good in theory.
Yeah.
But often it just means you're expected to always be available, and that can lead to burnout.
So it's not just about getting more women into tech.
Right.
It's about creating a culture where they can thrive and succeed without having to, sacrifice their well-being or their personal lives.
Exactly.
It seems like tackling these issues requires a pretty multifaceted approach.
It does.
It's not just about, changing individual behavior, but also about changing the systems.
That's a key insight.
And structures that keep this inequality going.
Chang emphasizes the need for both individual and systemic change.
Okay.
We need to challenge our own biases, call out sexism and discrimination, and support policies and practices that promote equality.
This is a lot to take in.
It is.
But I'm curious to hear more about Chang's idea that technology itself can actually be part of the solution.
Yeah.
After all this heavy stuff, I think we could all use some good news.
Brotopia does offer some pretty interesting ideas
about
how technology can be a force for good.
Okay.
One thing Chang highlights is how these online platforms can empower women.
So you mean things like social media and online communities?
Exactly, like Twitter, Reddit. Mm-hmm. These platforms give women a voice.
Right.
A way to share their stories and connect with others who've, had similar experiences. Mm. We've seen this with the #MeToo movement, which brought so much attention to sexual harassment.
It's amazing how these online spaces can create real world impact.
It is.
But we also know that these platforms can be places where harassment and abuse can flourish. Right. How do we deal with that?
Yeah, that's the tough part about online spaces.
Right.
Anonymity can embolden bad actors. Mm-hmm. But it also allows those who might otherwise be silenced to speak out.
Okay.
Chang, she doesn't shy away from this.
Good.
She acknowledges the problem.
Okay.
But she also points out efforts to make these platforms safer.
Right.
You mentioned Riot Games earlier.
Yes.
The company behind League of Legends. They've actually taken a really proactive approach to dealing with harassment.
Okay.
In their gaming community.
They've been very proactive.
They have.
In creating a safer online environment.
Yeah, they've introduced stricter rules, reporting mechanisms, and even brought in psychologists to help them understand the root causes of this toxic behavior.
Wow.
It's, it's not perfect, but it shows a real commitment to creating a better experience online.
That's encouraging.
Yeah.
It suggests that that change is possible, even in online spaces that are known for negativity.
What about the bigger platforms like Facebook, Twitter?
Right. Are they doing anything?
They're under a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
To do something, and they have made some changes, though a lot of people say it's not enough. Twitter has introduced a feature that lets users filter out, offensive or threatening content.
Yeah.
And Facebook is investing in both human moderators and AI to flag and remove abusive posts.
It sounds like a never-ending battle.
It is.
To stay one step ahead of
it is. And ultimately, it's up to all of us to hold these platforms accountable and demand that they prioritize safety and inclusivity.
Okay, so we've got online platforms that can amplify women's voices and companies working to make those online spaces safer.
Right.
Are there any other examples of how technology can be a force for good?
Chang also talks about how technology can help with more flexible work arrangements.
Okay.
Which benefits, everyone, but especially women who often have to take on more of the caregiving responsibilities.
You mean like remote work and flexible scheduling?
Exactly. These arrangements can really empower women to balance their work and personal lives, which is so important for creating a more fulfilling career path.
It's great that technology is making that kind of flexibility possible.
It is
for more and more people.
And as we move towards a more digital world, we have this opportunity to rethink those traditional work structures and create systems that are more equitable and support diverse needs.
I have to admit, after diving into Brotopia, there were times I felt pretty discouraged.
It can be heavy.
But this conversation has given me some hope.
I understand the problems are, complicated and deep-rooted, but there's a lot of positive energy in this growing movement for change.
So what's the one thing you want listeners to take away from this deep dive?
I think the biggest thing is realizing that we can't be complacent. The tech industry has this, this enormous power to shape the future.
Right.
And it's up to us to make sure that future is inclusive and fair and benefits everyone.
That's a powerful reminder.
Yeah.
What are some concrete things listeners can do to be part of the solution?
There's so many ways to get involved. Support organizations that are promoting STEM education for girls, mentor young women who want to work in tech.
Okay.
Challenge those sexist jokes and stereotypes when you hear them.
Right.
And advocate for policies that promote equal pay and opportunities.
Okay, those are all good suggestions.
Yeah.
And if anyone wants to learn more about the issues in Brotopia, the book is a fantastic place to start.
It is.
It's a really powerful and thought-provoking read.
It is.
And don't forget to talk about these things with your friends and family and colleagues.
Absolutely. The more we talk about them, the more we raise awareness and work together to create a more just and equitable tech world.
This deep dive has been quite a journey.
It has.
We've explored some of the dark sides of the tech world.
Yeah.
But we've also seen the progress.
Yeah.
And the possibility of a better future.
I agree. It's been a privilege to talk about this with you.
Well, thank you for sharing your insights.
Of course.
And to our listeners, thank you for joining us.
Yes.
On this deep dive into Brotopia.
It's been great.
We hope it's made you think about the tech world and inspired you to help create a more inclusive and equitable future for everyone.
Absolutely.
Thanks again for listening.